We're going to take another look at this example. We talked about the state and proper state handling, and I advocate for using Lodash's clone deep in order to copy the current state, make a new one, brand new one, deep copy, and then modify it, and then use it to use a set state. That's a general pattern, I think, usable in most cases. How did we get to this Lodash library, clone deep? Well, I imported the Lodash library in a couple of different ways here at the top of the file. I imported it as everything underscore from Lodash. So if I use clone deep this way, I would use underscore dot clone deep, as we did in JavaScript, the Lodash way. When I import it as a single method, though, import clone deep from the specific file, then I just get this one symbol, clone deep, and that's how I refer to it, clone deep. Now, of the two methods, line 6 is much preferred, right? Because the build system is going to see this and say, this module depends on everything in Lodash. And then when it makes the production build, its goal is to make that production build as small as possible. And when it sees there's a dependency on every element in the Lodash library, it's going to say that code needs it, and it includes it. That means your production build has the entire Lodash library, and all of the customers, all the visitors to your page are going to download the Lodash library, even though the entire Lodash library, even though you're just using clone deep. So, not good practice. Line 6, better practice, because it boils down to the build system, which can then say, oh, clone deep is a dependency, and just include that in the ultimate delivery, the package that gets delivered to the individual browsers when the code is in production. As long as we're here at the top of the file, let's talk about card info. So card info is what we've used before, and I've copied that file into cardinfo.js with a minor modification. I export default card info. As we've seen, this makes this a module that exports this single symbol, which is then imported into app.js, which allows us to use it, just as we've used it before, an array of card info. Let's take a look at the use. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about the images here too. So this card image, where does it come from? I've created a folder here under public, small cards. So all web pages have this concept, a public folder, a single folder that's directly visible by the browser, so the browser can read the contents of this folder. All other folders on a website are hidden by default. The browser can't see them. So it sees public, it sees small cards, and then we path to it. Okay, I'll show the use of this in a second, but all the things in the public folder, again, fairly common concept. And what the build system will do then with the public folder is bundle it up and make it part of the installation. Otherwise, though, it doesn't manage the public folder. So another way to include images is to include them into the source folder. This would be hidden from the browser by default, but managed by Webpack. Okay, and that brings a lot of advantages to it, right? As we've talked about with the Lodash library, efficiency gains. It marks the files. It deals with them properly, all the image assets. So importing them is slightly more complicated, and because of that, I don't encourage it for your work. But here I did it just to satisfy my fact that I could do it, and that is this images array is going to be a preloaded array of all the images that it finds in the small cards folder, and then that images can be used directly. So two ways of including images: an official build system way, and just putting them in the public folder, which will be easier for you to do, and that's what I encourage you to do. I'll show you the code for dealing with that. So down in the render method, really, which is, remember, what's going to be used to update the display, we use a random number generator, as we've done, and we use image path with a public process environment public URL. So this is where the base folder is stored for the public. Now, in our case, this environment variable is going to be empty string. We haven't modified where the public folder is. If we move it around and we do it properly, then this environment variable would change to mark the new location. We don't touch it. It's an empty string. We concatenate onto that empty string small cards. That gets down to the next folder underneath public, and then card info. And that uses our card info that we've imported and the random number to pull out the file name and build the path as we've done in the past. And then we use it right here. So expand it out here. In other words, we have our tag language here, and we expand this out here for the alt image, and that's what pulls in this image here. This commented out code is using the images array that was imported from the official build system folder here. You don't need to use that technique. All right, so we've seen how we use Lodash, import it. We've seen how we use card info, small modification, export default card info. And then we've seen how cards are used, create a small cards folder underneath the public folder, and you should be able to access it directly with this URL, right? Concatenate process.environment public URL to small cards, and then pull your card info out as you've done in the past. All right, the infrastructure and set state. Thank you.